Hey guys, today we're going to be looking at scatter plots, and in particular we're going to be looking at trend lines and then making more predictions based off of those trend lines. A trend line is a straight line that comes closest to all the points in a scatter plot. So if we wanted to go up through the middle of these points, we want to have the same amount of points on one side of the line as we would the other side of the line. Now, on this example, I'm seeing pages in a book and chapters, so it kind of sounds like people looked at various books. They looked at how many pages are in the book versus how many chapters are in the book as well, and then they made a scatter plot based on the pages and chapters. Now, let's talk about the point 0, 0 for just a minute. If there are 0 pages in a book, you don't have a book, which means there's probably not going to be any chapters. And so 0, 0 is definitely a point for this situation. Now, to draw my trend line, I'm going to start at 0, 0, and then again we're going to go up through the middle of these points the best we can to have the same amount of points on one side as there are on the other side. Okay, right there looks to be about good. If you notice on the right side, 1, 2, 3, 4 dots. On the left side, 1, 2, 3, 4. This dot is kind of touching the line, and this one is touching the line as well. So we made it go up through the center as close as we can. And then now we're going to answer questions about our trend line. So first of all, we want to figure out what is the slope. And remember that slope is rise over run. So I'm definitely going to use the point 0, 0 because that is a good clear point for us to see. And then another point looks like it could possibly be 2 chapters and 30. If you notice, I'm not using one of the points that they already gave. I'm using the grid lines, and our trend line crosses these 2 lines fairly well. And so I do want to use that point instead of one that they gave us. So if you remember, slope is rise over run. So we need to figure out how far up does it go and then how far over. So here's 1 space, 2 space, 3 spaces. Now the y-axis is counting by tens each time. So that would have been 10, 20, 30 is the rise. And then the run, we would go over 1, 2, and I'm looking at the x-axis, and those are counting by ones. And then let's go ahead and simplify the slope. 30 divided by 2 is equal to 15. Okay, we also want to tell what the y-intercept is. Well, crosses the y-axis here at 0. And then let's make an equation. Remember, an equation is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope, and then b is the y-intercept. So we're going to come up with an equation for this particular line. So I'm going to start with y equals, the slope was 15, and if you notice the trend line goes up from left to right, it's a positive association, so this is a positive slope, 15x, and the y-intercept is 0, so you could put plus 0, but I'm going to leave it alone and just leave it as y equals 15x. Association, like I said a second ago, it's going up from left to right. The graph is trending upwards, so this is positive. And then the meaning of slope. So let's talk about what this problem's dealing with. Like I mentioned, people took various books. They looked at how many pages are in a book, and then they compared it to how many chapters are in that book as well. So the meaning of slope, let's see. Our slope was 15. So for each chapter, after each chapter is added, we could say that there's about 15 pages for each chapter. Now, is this always the case? No, but just in general, we would say there's about 15 pages per chapter. And then the meaning of the y-intercept, we kind of already talked about. Remember, it crosses at 0, 0. So for the y-intercept, if you have 0 chapters, you have 0 pages, no book. Now, could we have a book that just has pages and no chapters? Absolutely. But in context of this problem, we would say, well, for 0 chapters, there's 0 pages. All right, the last question for this one says, about how many pages would a book with 20 chapters have? Okay, so let's go back to our equation. Y equals 15x, where x stands for chapters, if you look at the x-axis, and here it's asking for 20 chapters, so we would plug in 20 for x, and so all we would need to do is 15 times 20. Well, 15 times 20 is equal to 300. So we could estimate if there's about 20 chapters in a book, we would think, well, maybe it would have somewhere around 300 pages. Alright, let's look at this last example here. So Keaton's mother gave him $20 to play arcade games. The games do not cost the same amount of money, so he could spend $1.25 one time and then maybe only spend 55 cents the next. The scatter plot shows how much money is left after he plays each game. So as he plays more and more games, the money that his mother gave him is continuing to decrease. So I'm going to try to make a trend line. Remember, we try to go up through the center of the points as best as we can. And that looks fairly centered here. The points are fairly close to the line. There's about the same amount of points on the left side as there is the right side. So this is a good trend line. And let's do this all over again. So we want to figure out what the slope is. I'm definitely going to use this point right up here. And then another good point that crosses the grid lines will be this one here. So let's figure out rise over run. If you notice, the y-axis is counting by 2s. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 is the rise. And then the run, 1, 2, 3, 4. And these are counting by 2s. So 4 times 2 is 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, let's kind of simplify this down, and remember we are talking about money, so I'm actually going to change this to a decimal answer by doing FILO, first number in, last number out. 8 goes into 10 one time, minus 8, which is 2 left over. I'm going to add a decimal and a 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 20 twice, minus 16, and we have 4 left over, add a 0, bring it down, and 8 goes into 40 5 times. So we could say that Keaton is spending about $1.25 on each game. If you notice, the trend is going downwards, and so this is a negative $1.25. Alright, now we want to know the y-intercept. Remember, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, and it crosses up here at 20. And then now let's create our equation. Y equals mx plus b. So we're going to leave, actually I'm going to change y to be the letter b for balance. So the balance is equal to, our slope was a negative $1.25 per game. So I'm going to use G for game. And then he ended up starting with a y-intercept of $20. Okay, so B for balance is equal to $1.25 per game. and then his mom ended up giving $20 to start with. The association, if you notice, our trend line is going down from left to right, so this is a negative association. Meaning of the slope. So the slope is what repeats over and over. It has some kind of pattern, and Keaton keeps playing games. And as he continues to play games, we could say he's approximately spending about $1.25 for each game. Now, like I said before, the games actually aren't costing the same thing. If you notice, these points actually don't make a straight line over here, so that means some games could cost 75 cents, other games could cost $2. So it just depended on the game, but in general, we could say he's spending about $1.25 on each game. The liner set, again, is 20, and so the meaning here is that that's how much he's starting with. Then the last question says, could Keaton have played 17 games? So let's look at our graph for just a minute. I'm looking, and at 16 games, it's showing that he has $0. So we would say, no, he couldn't play a 17th game because at 16 he's already out of money. However, I would argue the point that yes, he could play 17 games. The only way that he could play 17 games is that maybe he should choose to play some games that cost less money. So yes, he could make 17 games work if he chose to play a few cheaper games. Okay guys, that is scatter plots with a trend line. Remember, a trend line goes up through the center of the points as best as you can make it fit. It doesn't have to touch all the points. We can write an equation based on our trend line and then make some generalizations about what's happening to the data and predict for a future number. Thank you guys for watching.